Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you could be here. Today we have a book review. Let's go. So not long ago I finished book 4 in the Deathgate cycle by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, Serpent, Mage, and just had a phenomenal time reading it. I've been working slowly through this series. My first time reading it through completely, and I've just absolutely been loving it. And this completes the original arc. The first 4 books complete a story arc, and then there's 3 more books in the series that continue on and kind of wrap up all the loose ends of the arc. At least that's my understanding of it. So, Serpent Mage takes place in the world of Chalestra or Kelestra. I'm not quite sure how it's supposed to be pronounced, but it's it starts with a CH. So I'm assuming Chalestra, but it could be a hard K sound. And Chalestra is the world of water in this series. Now, just to kind of give you a brief overview of the series, long ago, a race of wizards sundered the world, as it was known at the time, into 4 different realms. And there's not a whole lot of detail at the beginning as to why they did it, but they did do it. And so it got sundered into 4 realms: air, fire, earth, and water. So Chalestra is the world of water. And the previous books to this, Dragonwing takes place on Arianas, which is the world of air. Elvenstar takes place in the world of fire, which is called Prion. The third book takes place on the world of Abarak, which is the realm of stone. And then, of course, we've got the world of water. So those were the 4 realms that the world was sundered into, torn apart into. And you've got an amalgam of races on each different world. You've got elves, you've got humans, you've got dwarves, and then you've got 2 other races. Well, one race primarily, which is the Sartan. There's a few Sartans still living. You've got the patrons, who have been trapped in the labyrinth, imprisoned in the labyrinth for thousands of years. And then you got the Sartan. And the 2 races are similar in some respects. The Sartan chant runes, and they dance the runes to create their magic. The patrons wear their runes on their skin, and they trace those runes to create their magic and things like that. So they kind of seem to come from the same basic stock, more or less, but they do have distinguishing characteristics that set them apart from each other. But despite those differences, they are, for the most part, pretty equal in power. So that's kind of just a brief overview of the world and the universe. So having read Serpent Mage, I feel like I've just gotten so much information on this world. Not only the world of Chalestra, but the world of the 4 realms in general has just opened up significantly, and I'm just so excited for where the series has gone and where it is going. And what was kind of different with Serpent Mage is at the very end of the book, there's a huge cliffhanger. I mean, there were elements in the previous books that keep you wanting more and do make you want to continue with the other books in the series, but they kind of had a good wrap up and a good ending to them, whereas Serpent Mage, there's no closure. there's no closure at all. It just leaves you hanging. You're like, "Ah, well, I guess I've got to read the next book right away," which I'm planning to anyway. I mean, next month I am planning on reading the next book, but it was just I was rather shocked by the ending and how empty I felt. I'm like, empty in a good way, right? I have gotten to know these characters so deeply and so intimately that I care about what happens to them. Especially certain characters in the book, like Haplo, who is kind of the main. He's kind of a protagonist, but he's really an anti-hero more or less. And then another man who is a Sartan called Alfred, and this little dog that follows Haplo around, and I mean, I some of these characters, I mean, are my absolute favorites. I mean, Haplo is just an amazingly written character. I just constantly love learning more about him and learning more about his motivations and seeing him change and evolve over time as the books progress. His character arc is just so immersive. And by the end of book 4, things came to a head, and I'm like, oh, okay, where do I go with that? I mean, I definitely am gonna read the next book and find out what happens, but it was kind of a gut punch at the end because I care about these characters so deeply, and now I've got to move on and try and pick up what was left in my heart at the end and find out what actually happens to the characters. So, Serpent Mage is a fantastic book. This entire series is fantastic. If you have not read it, you really, really should. If you like classic fantasy, if you like sword and sorcery, if you like unique magic systems, and especially if you're a fan of the Dragonlance series, which was kind of grew out of Dungeons and Dragons. If you like that sort of thing, you should really check out this series because the original Dragonlance books, the first 6, I believe, were written by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, and then of course they wrote this series. So it is just phenomenal, guys. I can't recommend it enough. So I'm going to go back and talk briefly about the world of Chelestra. Chelestra is so unique because it is a complete water world. The only part of this world that is not made of water is the main kingdom city where the Sartan ruled at one point. They created it, they sustained it, and then when they kind of disappeared, it started falling all apart and the magic started waning. But that is the only part of this world that is not water. The rest of the world is water, including the air. So, I mean, you got one point where one of the characters enters this world and finds that they can't breathe until they start learning how to breathe in water. And then once they start breathing normally and they kind of trick their mind into behaving normally, they can breathe just fine, but not for very long. So it's kind of weird in that way. The only land masses in this world are not even actually land masses. They're ancient creatures that have kind of gone to sleep and hibernated, kind of, but people have built habitations on top of them and everything like that. So it's such a unique and interesting world. I just kept eating it up. I'm like, wow, this is great. And then the water nullifies certain kinds of magic, which creates a whole host of different problems. So it's, this is a world that lives and breathes magic, and yet the water nullifies magic, or at least certain kinds of magic. So it's just wow, guys. I can't talk about it enough. This is just great. This was also a little bit different because in the previous books, the elves and humans and dwarves kind of more or less tolerated each other. But in this realm, they all kind of live harmoniously together, and that was kind of cool and different to see. And they all care about each other in different ways, and they use their different magics to really help out and make the world a better place as much as they possibly can, right? So just fantastic. I love this book. It's probably my favorite of the books so far that I've read. I really like Dragonwing. That's probably my second favorite. But this book was great. There's lots of subtle humor that makes you giggle and laugh, especially from the dwarves. They just have some great one-liners, and I love how the dwarven women have beards or have facial hair just like the men do. It's just kind of cool and quirky, but there's so much at stake in this book compared to the other books. There were things that were at stake in the other books. Don't get me wrong, but this book, I feel like, had the most at stake for all of the different characters involved. Haplo, I feel, grew so much in this book. So, but I don't want to get into lots of spoilers because I really want you to read this series if you have not. And I think a lot of you out there probably have not read it because I don't see it talked about a whole lot in fantasy book groups or on BookTube even. I see a few people talk about it, but it's rare to find. So read this series. At this point, I am just so invested, guys. I really am. I can't wait to continue and see where it goes. And that's all I'm gonna say. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you read this series? What are your thoughts on it? Have you read the entire series? You know, I'm still working my way up to finishing the series. So make sure that you are reading more books, and I will look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.